3 purses sitting on a nightstand. 2 cars parked outside, keys still in the ignition. A half-smoked pack of cigarettes. Medicine left behind. Not a single wallet, not a single driver's license, not $1 removed from the house. And 3 women, a mother, her daughter, and the daughter's best friend, gone without a trace. This is the scene that greeted investigators on the evening of June 7th, 1992, at 1717 East Delmar Street in Springfield, Missouri. But here's what makes it impossible to explain. There was no forced entry, no signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies. Just an ordinary suburban home with everything left exactly where it should be, except for the people who lived there. How does someone vanish from a house, 3 someones, in the middle of the night, leaving behind everything they'd need to survive, with no evidence of violence and never be seen again? The night before had been a celebration. Susie Streeter and Stacy McCall, both 19 years old, had just graduated from Kickapoo High School, like hundreds of other teenagers that warm June evening. They'd spent the night hopping between graduation parties, full of that particular energy that comes from being young and standing at the edge of everything changing. Around 10:30 that night, Stacy called her mother, Janice, to say their plans had shifted. The group had decided to wait until morning to drive down to Branson for their graduation trip. She and Susie would crash at their friend Janelle Kirby's house for the night. But when they arrived at Janelle's house around midnight, the place was packed. Wall-to-wall teenagers, nowhere to sleep comfortably. So sometime around 2 in the morning, Stacy and Susie made a simple, last-minute decision. They'd drive back to Susie's house instead, sleep in their own beds, and meet up with everyone in the morning. That house belonged to Susie's mother, Cheryl Levitt, a 47-year-old hairstylist who lived alone with her daughter and a small dog named Cinnamon. By all accounts, Cheryl was expecting Susie to be gone that night. She'd been planning to have the house to herself. Sometime between 2:15 a.m., when the girls were last seen leaving Janelle's, and 7:30 the next morning, all 3 women disappeared. But that wasn't the strangest part. When friends arrived the next morning to pick up Stacy and Susie for the Branson trip, the house was unlocked. The porch light was on. Everything looked normal, except for one detail. The glass globe covering the porch light was shattered, lying in pieces on the front step. Inside, Cinnamon, the family dog, was still there. Cheryl's car was in the carport. Susie's car was parked on the street. The girls' packed bags for Branson were sitting by the door, ready to go. Cheryl's bed looked slept in. One of the Venetian blinds near her bed was oddly bent, as if someone had been looking through it. She had a standing hair appointment scheduled at the salon where she worked later that day. An appointment she never missed. An appointment she never called to cancel. And here's where the mystery deepens into something far more troubling. The friends who arrived that morning didn't immediately think something was wrong. They thought maybe the women had left early or stepped out. So they waited. When concern finally started to creep in, they began calling around. At some point, someone noticed the shattered porch light and swept up the glass, trying to be helpful, trying to tidy up. Others washed a few dishes, emptied an ashtray. Between roughly 7:30 that morning and 9 o'clock that night, nearly 14 hours, an estimated 10 to 20 people passed through that unlocked house. Well-meaning friends and family members, looking for answers, waiting for the women to come home, cleaning up small messes without realizing what they were doing. They were erasing a crime scene that hadn't yet been identified as one. By the time police were finally notified that evening, any fingerprints, any trace evidence, any forensic clue that might have told investigators what happened in those early morning hours had been whipped away, swept up, washed down the drain. But there was one piece of evidence that survived. Until it didn't. On the answering machine in Cheryl Levitt's home, there was a message. Police would later say it sounded unusual, possibly significant. The voice, the content. Something about it struck investigators as potentially crucial to understanding what had happened. But before police ever heard it, someone who'd been in the house, trying to check messages, trying to help, accidentally erased it. Permanently. Gone. To this day, no one can say for certain what that message contained, who left it, or whether it could have solved this entire case. Think about that for a moment. 3 women vanish without a trace, and the one piece of evidence that police believed might hold a clue is erased before they ever arrive. The FBI joined the investigation on June 9th, just 2 days after the disappearance. Within a week, more than 20,000 missing person posters blanketed Springfield and the surrounding area. Divers searched Lake Springfield. They dragged the James River. Tips poured in by the hundreds. One witness reported seeing a green van parked near the Delmar Street house early that morning. Police took the tips seriously. They searched thousands of vans across the region. They even spray-painted one green and parked it outside the police station, hoping someone would recognize it and come forward with information. No one did. On New Year's Eve, 6 months after the disappearance, a man called the tip line for America's Most Wanted. He told the operator he had prime knowledge of what happened to the 3 missing women. The operator tried to transfer him to investigators in Springfield. The call dropped. Despite repeated public appeals, despite announcements begging him to call back, the man never did. His identity was never confirmed. What he knew, if he knew anything at all, disappeared with him. Over the years, investigators have looked hard at several suspects. Though no one has ever been charged, there was Dustin Rikla, Susie Streeter's ex-boyfriend, who'd recently been arrested for breaking into a mausoleum and stealing gold dental fillings from a skull. Susie had been set to testify against him. Police questioned him extensively. He took a polygraph test and passed. He testified before a grand jury in 1994. Nothing ever connected him conclusively to the disappearance. Then there's Robert Craig Cox, a man with a deeply troubling history. Cox was a convicted kidnapper who happened to be living in Springfield at the time of the disappearance. His girlfriend initially provided him with an alibi, until she didn't. Years later, she recanted her statement, saying she'd lied to protect him. In 1996, while serving time in prison for an unrelated crime, Cox agreed to an interview with a journalist. During that conversation, he said, unprompted, that he knew the 3 women were dead. He offered no details. He provided no evidence. He was never charged. To this day, investigators remain uncertain whether Robert Cox genuinely knew something, or whether he was simply a violent man seeking attention by inserting himself into a notorious case. And then there's Larry Dwayne Hall, a suspected serial killer who traveled the Midwest throughout the 1990s, attending Civil War reenactments. Hall has been connected, through investigation and circumstantial evidence, to the disappearances of multiple young women. And here's the detail that makes investigators keep returning to his name. The same weekend, Stacy McCall and Susie Streeter vanished. There were 2 separate Civil War reenactments happening within minutes of where the girls had been that night. Hall has never been charged in connection with the Springfield Three. He has never confessed. But his name continues to surface in investigative discussions, a shadow that won't quite fade. Searches have been conducted across 3 decades, each one raising hopes, none providing answers. In 1993, police searched a hog farm based on a tip. They found nothing. In 2002, cadaver dogs alerted on 3 separate spots in a concrete company yard. In Investigators dug. They found bones. But forensic analysis showed they were far too old to belong to the missing women. In 2003, a search near Cassville turned up what appeared to be a possible trace of blood and part of a green vehicle. The lead went nowhere. Then in 2007, a team used ground-penetrating radar to scan beneath a parking garage at Cox South Hospital in Springfield. The location had been identified by a psychic and a crime blogger, which made police skeptical from the start, despite the radar findings, despite public pressure to excavate. Police dismissed the lead as not credible enough to justify tearing up a functioning hospital parking structure. Those three anomalies remain beneath the concrete to this day, undisturbed, unexplained. In 1997, Cheryl Levitt and Susie Streeter were declared legally dead. Stacy McCall's mother, Janice, refused to make the same declaration. For more than 30 years now, Janice has said she will not declare her daughter dead until she knows for certain what happened. She has spent decades keeping the case alive, pushing for new leads, refusing to let the world forget. The case remains officially open, classified as missing persons, not homicide. Because without bodies, without physical evidence, police cannot definitively say what happened. But here's what we know for certain. 3 women were in that house sometime in the early hours of June 7th, 1992. By mid-morning, they were gone. They left behind their purses, their money, their identification, their medication, their cigarettes. Things no one leaves behind if they're planning to go somewhere. Things you can't survive long without if you've been taken against your will. They left behind 2 cars, engines cold, keys waiting. They left behind a dog, unharmed, and a house with no sign of forced entry, no overturned furniture, no shattered windows, except for that single broken porch light globe lying in fragments on the front step. Someone took 3 women from that house in the span of a few hours, in the middle of a quiet residential neighborhood, and left almost nothing behind to explain how or why. No screams woke the neighbors. No one saw a struggle. No witness came forward with a description of a suspect or a vehicle speeding away. And in the 30 years since, despite thousands of tips, despite FBI involvement, despite searches spanning multiple states and countless acres of land, not a single trace of Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, or Stacy McCall has ever been found. Janice McCall still lives in Springfield. The house at 1717 East Delmar Street still stands, though it's changed hands several times over the years. Somewhere in a file cabinet or evidence locker, the case remains open. And somewhere, in a forest, beneath concrete, in a place no one has thought to look, 3 women might still be waiting to be found. The only certain witness to what happened that night was a small dog named Cinnamon, who cannot tell us what she saw. Everyone else who knows the truth has kept silent for more than 3 decades. Or they've never been asked the right question. That concludes tonight's case from Midnight Files. Some mysteries are eventually solved. Others, it seems, are destined to remain in the dark. If you'd like to uncover more cases like these, make sure you're subscribed, because the files are never truly closed. Until next time.